JD Vance decided a couple of years ago he's gonna score some points by calling people without kids cat ladies, because he's in rooms with a bunch of right-wing incels that love the idea of mocking women. And so he did that, but unfortunately got filmed, and now he's gonna spend the rest of his career trying to answer for that and failing and flailing, as you'll see in this clip.
Carol Carty said she was almost a childless dog lady because she didn't happen to meet the right person until she was 40 years old. Another, Joan London, was offended that you don't think she has a stake in the future of the country because she doesn't have children. What do you say to key voters like that, Republicans, swing voters?
Sure.
Who are put off by your views?
Well, what I would say, Dana, is if you look at what I said in context, the Harris campaign has frankly lied about what I actually said. I'm pro-family. I want us to have more families, and obviously sometimes it doesn't work out, sometimes for medical reasons, sometimes because you don't meet the right person. But the point is that our country has become anti-family in its public policy.
If you want to be pro-family, I want to, because you do criticize, as you just did, the Democratic Party for being anti-family.
I do.
You called out Kamala Harris and Pete Buttigieg in particular. Kamala Harris has 2 stepchildren. Pete Buttigieg and his husband have adopted twins. Do you recognize them as parents and more broadly as being part of families?
Well, of course I do, Dana. I mean, you know my life story. I was actually raised. I was raised, but Dana, I was raised. I mean, one of the first people that I gave a hug to after my RNC convention speech was my stepmom, who's been an incredibly important person in my life.
So she's not childless.
My kids call her Mamaw. Of course, she's not childless. But again,
you called her that.
The criticism. I certainly did not call my own stepmother childless.
Kamala Harris.
I criticized Kamala Harris for being part of a set of ideas that exists in American leadership that is anti-family. I never, Dana, criticized people for not having kids. I criticized people for being anti-child. And I do think that Kamala Harris has made some bizarre statements. She has said things like it's reasonable not to have children over climate change. I think.
Yeah, that's not what she said. It's not what AOC said when they talked about it. What they said is there are people who are very concerned about bringing children into this world, and there are a number of reasons for that. Climate change is one of them. The high cost of living is another. And JD Vance, if he and the Republican Party would stop just shoveling every ounce of resources our country has to the people who already have the most, they could allay those fears and more people would be comfortable having kids. But they choose not to do that because while they campaign on being pro-family, they are pro 1% and pro corporations. And even in all of that attempt to write what the commentary that he had made, his argument is still, well, if you tried and failed, I'm not insulting you, even though he has said you have less stake in the country and you should have less political power. It's on tape. We're not going to pretend that it's not.
A storm is tearing up the digital media industry. Only our audience can save us in these difficult times. Help us reach our goal of 100,000 new members at tyt.com/team.
There are people who have decided not to have kids. They didn't fail to have kids. They didn't want to have kids. Maybe they never wanted to have kids. And they're still every bit the American that a JD Vance is. Pumping out your 13th baby doesn't make you more of a citizen. And him and Usha, his wife, by the way, keep just saying, well, people who failed are still Americans. There are still millions and millions and millions of people that never wanted to have kids. And the fundamental issue here for JD Vance is, he was in a room with a bunch of incels, and at that point, he wanted the cred. Yep. He knew what they wanted in that room. What they wanted was to have a 2-minute hate over lib women. These ugly, unhappy lib women, I hate them, they're the worst. And so he gave them that red meat. And now he's not in that room anymore. And the problem for him and for many Republicans is that room does not represent 51% of this country, okay? And once you go broad and you have to appeal to people who aren't just weirdos on 4chan, you look like a crazy person, JD Vance. That's what you look like.
Yeah, I mean, I've said this before. JD suffered the rise during the anti-woke culture war BS that the right went with and peddled for so long, and then got creamed in, the midterms in addition to 2020. So it wasn't working, and yet all of the podcasts are on video now. We know that. Okay, this stuff lives forever, right? I hopefully stand by all of the ridiculous jokes that I've made on this show and other shows, including my own. But that's exactly right, and there's no way. I mean, JD is very good at spinning things. You can't spin what he said. He said we are run by childless cat ladies, and they basically should not be allowed to vote. But in the service of not being weird, I think it's very true. Like, look, why don't we just count those people who tried to have kids? How would we count them? I don't know. We could measure their semen. Let's just measure that. Let's just see how much they've expelled. We'll keep it for ourselves. We'll measure how much you attempted, and we'll then note that down, and how much you expelled will then translate into your voting power. Super normal.
The logistical difficulty in that is that for most people, it'd be hard to track previous emissions of that sort. They would have had to do something like do it like into a couch cushion where it might still be there to be tracked. That'd be the only way that we could get them. No, it's all deeply, deeply weird. And like him with his thought experiment about parents getting like a vote for their kids. Well, remember, you're a Republican, so like best case scenario, they'd want you to have like half a vote for each of your kids. Remember who you actually are a part of on that side. But the entire thing is disgusting. It rightly turns off not only America's women, but America's men that aren't fundamentally broken at a genetic level.
I just want to add, I think it's really, really quick. The real question isn't, did you say this? Did you not say this? Yes, it stands. He said it, boom. It's what are you going to do to help families actually, right? Yeah. And I mean, let's set aside the idea that somehow if you don't have a family, you're a second-class citizen, which is utter BS. But what about people who do have a family? Kamala Harris is basically running on this care economy. We know that is gonna be a huge part of her campaign. She's talking about universal pre-K. She's talking about paid family leave. She's talking about elder care and all the things that get in the way of really having a robust family that has some security. So what the hell are you doing? What are you guys doing other than shaming people for not being rich enough to have a family? And like your answer for people being scared to have kids because of imminent climate doom is you're an idiot? No, they're being thoughtful about the future.